Blood Money, episode 64 with Shawn McBreairty. Going to war against the classroom to clinic pipeline. All right, we're on the next episode of Blood Money. Today I have a very special guest, Shawn McBreairty. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate being on.
I appreciate having you on. So Shawn has been really fighting a lot of this woke nonsense. He's been going after a lot of these issues with critical race theory, sexualizing children, and he has definitely paid a price for it, but has also made some of these, frankly, these scumbags pay a price. And let's just, dive right into it, Shawn. Give us a little bit of background, your history, and then take us into what's been happening this last 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So on June 2nd, 2020, my twins were juniors in high school, my twin girls. I thought I lived in the best little town in the United States, Cumberland, Maine, which is outside of Portland, Maine. And basically, we received a letter from our anti-racist committee from our school board that said we were all white supremacists. We just didn't know it. And that was on the heels of George Floyd's death and Minneapolis burning to the ground. And they threw our police department under the bus and the whole Black Lives Matter thing and, the whole deal. And I was sitting at the table working from home at that point, and I said to my wife, are you reading this the same way I'm reading it? Because I believe racism exists. I don't believe institutional racism exists. At least it hasn't since 1964 with the Civil Rights Act. So I very politely sent a note back to the superintendent saying, hey, look, this is a conversation for parents to have, not for schools. You concentrate on the basics, and I'll parent my kids on the subject of racism or police brutality or riots or whatever way you want to have a conversation. And he very quickly said that I wasn't woke enough to understand what he was talking about. So I started to think, hey, did I miss something? I used to manage grocery stores. We had 10,000 customers a week. I treated every one of them with respect, regardless of their skin color or their hairstyle or their sexual preference or whatever, right? And what I very quickly found was that they had hired an anti-racism company called Community Change Inc. out of Boston, Massachusetts, and had paid them, I think it was around $13,000. So not a tremendous amount of money, but the kicker was that these guys said, in order to eliminate racism, you must eliminate capitalism and move to an anarchist and socialist form of government. That's my kid's school that I'm paying taxes to, calling me a white supremacist, and then saying that they want to move to socialism and anarchy. So from there, the relationship got a little more contentious. I got kicked out of a couple school board meetings for simply talking about the truth. I had done a number of Freedom of Access Act requests, FOA in Maine. It's called FOIA nationally and in some other states. And then ultimately, the global story became that the superintendent wanted to withhold me from my now senior twin daughter's high school graduation because I had exposed them for teaching critical race theory in the school starting in kindergarten. And that became a global story and got me on Tucker Carlson, a number of these Fox shows. And sort of that started, I guess, my journey into this calling, which is really to try to talk to parents about educational freedom and exposing the biblically bad stuff that's going on in our school districts today.
Biblically bad stuff is that's the way to perfect title, biblically bad stuff, because sexualizing children, I can't even believe that we're in this moronic place in American society right now, that this is even an option to sexualize children. I mean, it makes no sense on a medical level, on a scientific level, on an emotional level, on an emotional development level. And frankly, what I blame for this is there's two different schools of thought, in terms of psychology, development of children. One is all theory based, and that's where all these woke nut jobs come from. It's all theory based on the same level that Nazism was theory based, of the Aryan bloodlines and white supremacy and all that stuff. So without a shadow of a doubt, this is a fascist movement, right? And then you have the other kind of science, which is based upon essentially centuries of development in animals, in how children of animals develop very well. And what that shows us is that the way these folks think is completely against nature, meaning they are toxifying our children. And you could see this in the animal kingdom. If you did those same things that you're trying to do to children, to your tigers and your bears and whatever, the society would fall apart. And we see this in animals. And I found this out because I started talking to a lot of these children's therapists that come from this school of thought that's actually based upon research of centuries of animal behavior, the two, having two parents, how that affects most animals in the animal kingdom. So anyway, this is like a complete bastardization of really the facts at hand, and they're experimenting on our children. So, long and short is I commend you on all of this stuff, and you're really going up against just a complete insane movement that's infect our country.
Well, I think there's definitely, it's a neo-Marxism that's going on in these schools. I say educational terrorists are now running our public schools.
Educational terrorist is a good one. It is terrorism.
Yeah, they're paid taxpayer paid activists that are really pushing this leftist indoctrination. And I'm going to tie in sort of the blood money aspect to what I've been calling the classroom to clinic pipeline, and we'll come back to that. Mm-hmm. But when I moved from Cumberland, we moved to Hamden, Maine, where I grew up and graduated from high school here. Mm-hmm. A lot of friends knew that I spoke for parents and students and teachers down in Cumberland that didn't have the wherewithal or courage to speak up. And they said, Shawn, do you know how bad this school system is? And so I thought critical race theory was bad, as you kind of touched on. And now it became all about the hypersexualization of minors. Mm-hmm. In middle school here at Reedsbrook Middle School, which I would call the epicenter of hypersexualization in Maine and possibly the country. Wow. There have been dozens of examples in articles, national articles written here. But the problem really was that the 2022 Maine Teacher of the Year, Kelsey Stoyanova, who happened to be an 8th grade teacher, was pushing a book list. And that was one of the woke reasons she was selected to be the Teacher of the Year in Maine from the Department of Education, of course. And as soon as I started looking at that book list, it was anti-father, anti-police, transgender, LGBTQ, and hardcore kiddie porn, of which they were pushing with prizes, incentives, and daily announcements in the classroom in 7th and 8th grade to 11-year-olds, right?
Wow.
So I started to expose her, expose the school. I went to the school, asked some questions. We had a private meeting with the superintendent, me and 2 other parents, and we basically said, hey, look, this is not the basics of reading and writing and arithmetic and the whole situation like you and I grew up in. It was basically this, again, neo-Marxist leftist ideology. And at this point, I believe that all of these people are useful idiots. They don't really understand what they're doing. And some of them think that they're creating a vital, social emotional network in these kids, where when you really start to break it down, all this gobbledygook is basically dividing our country. It's dividing our citizens. And in no time, at least in Maine's history, have educational assessments been worse and our tax dollars higher than they are today. So the return on investment is the worst in history here in Maine because of folks like Pender Macon, who is the commissioner of the Maine Department of Education, and our governor, Janet Mills. I
mean, let's not mince words here. This is an agenda to destroy children, because you don't have to. I mean, it's like the COVID agenda, right? You get all these untested vax, and now people are dying, and people are wondering, why are people just croaking? Why myocarditis? Why are people falling, in the middle of a soccer game or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. It's obvious where this road leads. This road leads to children's suicide, right? It leads to children living unfulfilled, empty lives. It's literally destroying children before they even have a chance to develop. So this is, we're talking about acts of terrorism, child abuse. How the hell is this happening in this country? How? In this country where, honestly, 40 years ago when I was growing up, people would have been hung on the streets for this kind of thing. But now it's okay.
It's been incrementalism for these leftists who are now running our schools. And I would say in Maine, we are one of the oldest, if not the oldest state in the nation. Thus, our teachers are probably in that same older generation. A lot of these older teachers are bailing and retiring early because they don't want to teach this nonsense anymore. They don't want to teach social emotional learning, critical race theory. They don't want to hypersexualize kids. They just want to teach math. Mm-hmm. And so they're bailing. And behind them is a 24-year-old pink-haired, triple nose ring, neck tattoo, something or other going on.
That probably grew up without a father, that probably had a turbulent home, which is what the government loves, because fatherless homes are the best way to create, school shooters, nut jobs, mentally ill people. And this is what we've been fostering in this country. By the way, through our family courts that are, we do a lot of episodes. We just did one yesterday about how literally men's lives are being destroyed by the court system. It's not even, at this point, it's not even a topic of discussion. It's obvious. You hear the same story. There's an agenda. You hear the same story over and over again. And then you hear these stories about, like, the 24-year-old, person with the purple hair grew up without a father, now has this agenda to, go against men through the schools. I mean, it's just self-destruction.
Yeah, or they want kindergartners to affirm their sexuality every day, because their sexuality is their being. It is their image, where sexuality to normal people are just one part of our personality. To them, sexuality is everything. So they look to kids to affirm them, because any normal adult like myself would say, no, listen, you were kind of born with what you got. If you want to legally change your name, if you want to legally change your sex, that's great. I'm not going to tolerate it. Okay. I'm not going to go down that road, because again, these teachers, they're looking for acceptance in kids, 11-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds,
Like, you're talking about low confidence, just broken individuals. Why go to you get approval, or who cares about approval in my mind? But if you go to your peers. You don't go. Like 25-year-olds don't go to 5-year-olds for.
Well, so you asked the question, why is this still happening? And here's my answer. Incrementalism worked for the liberals for decades. In the last 3 years, they turned the dial up to 11, right? They cranked it up, and things that were said in whispers are now being shouted on poster boards in the school, because I think that parents, especially with COVID, I'm a pureblood, by the way, just for the record, that during the whole sheeple process with masking and the mandates, government saying what you had to do and when you could do it, many parents that were already sheep became like super sheep, right? They're now lost. Yeah. And people like myself and like you probably rebelled and were seen kind of as the crazy person for rebelling. But now guess who's crazy? All of those things that we said were conspiracy theories have been true. It's George Orwell. It is definitely, there are cult tactics happening in these schools. And the first year and a half I was doing this, I thought to myself, if I just provided the truth and provided them the details on what they were doing wrong, they would see the error of their ways and they'd make a change. But what I found, and it took me a year and a half, is no, they double down every time. When you come as a parent or a taxpayer or a teacher or a student and says, hey, I have a concern, what they do is they just say, yeah, well, I'm going to do it twice as hard now. Basically, double middle finger to you. Screw you, we're doing it anyway. But the other pieces that I do see, and you mentioned beta males, is we've lost that toxic masculinity that I actually had on my Twitter profile for a while. It's actually in one of the lawsuits that one of the schools is selling.
By the way, I hate calling it toxic masculinity, because that's your bullshit term. What it is the fact that men are dangerous and we are supposed to be dangerous. Right. We are. It's like, what's his name? Peterson, Dr. Peterson from Canada. He says men are supposed to be dangerous. We're supposed to be dangerous. It's not toxicity. It's the fact that we are supposed to be dangerous to what threatens civilization, and that's gone. That's gone away with these beta males.
Well, I think we're supposed to protect the family, right? Our job is to protect the family. Millions of years, and these beta males, they've decided, and with some of, I think, the feminization of males that we're seeing in schools nowadays, is that people are graduating and getting into adulthood, having kids, and instead of saying, geez, I just don't think this is right because I can critically think for myself, they are, again, going along with the sheep, and they're just kind of mulling and saying, well, I'm just going to go along with it. And what I find is when I say something like there's pornography in your local library, people kind of cock their head like a dog, and they don't know how to transfer the information. And so it's fight, flight, or freeze. And it takes me 2 or 3 times to talk to a parent, 2 or 3 iterations, for them to finally go, are you serious about porn in the classroom or in the library? And I say, yes. And here's the page, and here's the book, and it's on this book list, and what's going on. Now, the other piece to that is I think that some of these families, if they really found out what was going on in the schools, they'd have to make a life-altering decision to pull their kid out for homeschool or Christian school, and that would mess up their little perfect social environment that they think they live in. And I tell parents, if you're not going to fight for your kids' education like their lives depend on it, because it does, you need to pull your kids out of these schools. There's no third option, because they're going to take your kid, and I'll bet you, I don't want to bet your kid's life on it, but I will bet that that kid is going to be taken if they don't have a good structural foundation.
I mean, I've heard so many stories about suicide, lives falling apart, depression. I'm hearing one of my friend's kids is cutting herself, like 12, 13 years old, because of some crap she saw on TikTok. You look at TikTok in China, they're teaching complex math experiments to children. Over here, it's sorry, I told you I was going to be brutal. It's a whorehouse. It's a whorehouse. We're teaching our children to be whores. Right? Beta male whores, female whores, they are whores. Sorry, it's a tough.
Listen, I've got a TikTok account, and it's funny because mine is it'll come up. It'll be snowmobiling, home improvement, golden retrievers, boobs, and it's like, okay, I didn't search that stuff out. It just shows up, and I think, yeah, TikTok is a tremendous waste of time. It is really blurring the minds of kids. It's creating this situation where kids think the world revolves around them instead of them being part of the community. And you mentioned anxiety and depression. I had an 11-year-old here in Hamden from the middle school write testimony for me, unnamed, but she basically said from the moment she gets off the bus, her anxiety and depression goes through the roof, because she knows all day long in middle school, as an 11-year-old kid, she's going to be fed LGBTQ plus nonsense all day. And as a Christian conservative young woman, think about what we were doing when I was 11. It was wiffle ball and football and riding my bike and just being a kid. And now these kids have to tell the teachers what sex they are.
Yeah.
And ultimately, again, this blood money piece, this classroom to clinic pipeline, is something we can go down that road. But it is becoming more evident to me that this is a big follow the money situation as to what's going on in these schools.
Big time. They want to destroy the children. That's how they bring socialism into this country. That's how they create sheep.
Every time the leftist says that you're doing something wrong, it's actually it's this mirror impression. They've already done it. They've already done the wrong. They continue to do the wrong. They just want to put pressure on you as a totalitarian regime, and really that's the problem. So I mean, Trudeau obviously has potentially, we the whole conspiracy theory that he was born from Cuba. And that whole communist situation, whether or not that's true or not, Canada used to be the sane place, right? I mean, Maine is right next to the Canadian border.
Yeah.
And I have no desire to go to Canada at all, because somebody like me, I don't know if I'll be able to get back in the country, first off. But I've got no desire, because those guys are crazy pants up there right now in Canada.
Yeah. It's insanity. I mean, I was interviewing Chris Sky a few weeks back, and basically the school board over there in the area that he's in the district that is in, did this, they wanted to do all this woke stuff 4 years ago. They looked at it and they said, no way, this is bad for the children. Now, the superintendent, without approval, basically brought those same books that 4 years ago on paper got rejected by the school board because it was unhealthy for children, was able to bring it in, total LGBTQ agenda, totally attacking children that are like 10 years old, literally books with like, I don't even know, male, female giving blowjobs to each other. I mean,
genderqueer is the worst, best example of what you're talking about. Genderqueer is a horrible book. The leftists say genderqueer, a memoir, and you have to kind of say that under like hush tones, a memoir. Well, no, it's not a memoir. It's a porn book of cartoon kiddie porn. And these leftist librarians are pushing this sexuality on kids. Because ultimately, I believe if you can get an 11-year-old to pick her pronouns, you can get that same 11-year-old to pick their sexual partner. And that's the connection, right? It's a pedophilia scenario. It's all of these scenarios that are going on. And like I said, many of these teachers are simply useful idiots. They don't understand their role that they're playing in this deal. But again, the classroom to clinic pipeline, you get a kid that can switch genders, which I don't believe in. John Money, a pedophile, created the word gender a number of years ago. If you look him up, it's just horrific. So I don't tolerate the word gender. There are two sexes. It's male and female. You get what you're birthed with. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to cut off your junk when you're 18, I don't recommend it, but feel free. It's your life, okay?
Go for it. Seriously. Right. If you're 18, I don't give a shit.
Right. But I've interviewed folks on my podcast like Chloe Cole, the 18-year-old detransitioner who has been a warrior out there fighting and trying to expose what's going on. At the age 15, they convinced her that she could be a boy, and she had a double mastectomy at 15 years old. Now she's 18 and she sees the error of her ways. If she wants to have kids and she's not even sure she can because of all the cross hormones that they pumped into her, she can obviously never breastfeed a baby. And that is ultimately the blood money aspect to tie into kind of your name in the podcast is between big pharma, who I've heard Pfizer say $1.3 million is what a transition student is worth to them over the lifetime because of hormones and all of these other things. And then places like Boston Children's Hospital, where I stood in front of in a peaceful protest with Billboard Chris. I don't know if you know Chris at all. And we tried to expose the fact that they were giving double mastectomies to kids as young as 15, just like Chloe, ruining their life. And now they are subjected to government or medical intervention for the rest of their entire life. I mean,
it's beautiful for them. It's beautiful. And by the way, let me just point out something here. Every industrial complex, we have our pharmaceutical industrial complex. It's not even healthcare anymore. It's really all about the pharma industry. All these doctors are basically the pharma. They're groomed from school. They're basically pharma bitches. I'm sorry. If they weren't pharma bitches, they wouldn't have all gone along with this, remdesivir hospital killing fields. These people are absolute scum. They're useless. Now, our other industrial complex, whether it's military industrial complex, our lawyer judicial industrial complex, all corrupted as well. The whole country is corrupt. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry to be a bummer. Everything's blood money right now because the monetary value that they place on children's kidnapping through family court, again, same sort of thing. $1.3 to $1.5 million. You look at the bonds, you don't even know they're trading children, but there's actual bonds that the court, the judges, the lawyers, the social workers all benefit from literally kidnapping, trafficking your children. That's why there's so many fucked up children in this country. Because when you have 21 to 25 million kids growing up without fathers because of a corrupt family court system, that's going to result in the girl with the purple hair that hates daddy, that now wants to destroy all these other kids in school and really fuck up their mind, right?
Well, if you have a kid like Chloe who's on the spectrum with ADHD, if they come, 70% of these kids, I believe, are without fathers. It's a high percentage of young women that they're going after, and so you fit into some of these boxes, and then very quickly you're brought into a gay sexuality alliance that are in high schools, taxpayer funded. And basically, they become allies. They are asked to participate. They're asked to really celebrate what's going on with this transgender movement. And again, it's all about sexuality. Meanwhile, these kids can't read or write. They can't do math. And ultimately, if they decide like Chloe did, and I really feel for her, to mutilate their body, there's no coming back from that, right?
No,
I mean, there's nothing that they can do besides try to look for repentance.
How do we get rid of these, like, just pieces of utter garbage that have infiltrated our system?
It's difficult. I think so. I say to parents that we're part of a 3-act play, at least here in Maine. The first act is exposure, and not enough parents know what's going on. Some because they don't want to know, some because they simply don't have time to know. But ultimately, I've said to people non-egotistically, 10 million people around the globe have seen me on television, yet 90% of my own state has no idea what I'm talking about. So to me, exposure we're still in this key. And then the second part of the play really is speaking to solutions, of which these schools and these medical practices obviously don't want to hear because they're the expert. They went to school for X amount of years. And if I can transition people from the first act to the third act, which is taking back local control, that's ultimately what I'm trying to do. So educational freedom is the term that I use, which is a no strings attached. Your tax dollars follow your child, whether or not you homeschool, send them to a Christian school, private school, charter, whatever it is, that would follow you with no strings attached. And until we can get to local control again and take back these school board seats from leftists who are basically progressive Democrats in 99% of the cases, these schools have zero chance at success. Because in Maine, only 1/3 of 4th graders can read at proficiency, and only 1/3 of 8th graders can do math at proficiency. Our educational assessments have never been worse since they were tracked in 1998, if you can believe that.
Wow.
So it's really, in Maine, the only 2 jobs that a school board has is, one, creating policy. So you get rid of all of this transgender nonsensical policies. And secondary, their other job is to hold the superintendent accountable. So when you have a school board who doesn't know what they're doing and they're leftists, and you have a superintendent who wants the tail wagging the dog scenario, these kids are screwed. And the teachers, instead of the teachers standing up and saying, I don't think we should really be talking to 11-year-olds about sexuality. We
Yeah.
should be talking to them about geography until the teachers, the parents, the students, the taxpayers have mass compliance.
Hmm.
It's just going to continue to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's mass non-compliance. Is that something that comes about through basically parents? What are they doing? Pulling the kids out of the school? I mean, how do you?
Yeah, in the last 2 years, I think if I remember right, more parents have pulled kids out of school than the last 5 or 6 years combined. And
Well,
so the message is getting there. So if you have a Christian conservative parent that already is probably leaning towards school, something's wrong in school, and then somebody like me comes along and says, "Hey, here are hundreds of examples of issues in Maine schools. Just pick one or two of them."
mhm.
They will pull their kid out. Christian schools, the waiting lists have never been longer here in Maine.
Hmm.
Catholic schools, the same thing. But I think until people put pressure on pulling their kids in a massive way, where we get a serious dent in the funding that's going to these schools,
Hmm.
when you have a school like my previous school, Cumberland, Maine, MSAD 51, their budget when I left 3 years ago, I think was $44 million. It was an average of $19,000 per pupil. And that didn't even count the teachers' retirement fund. So
Wow.
let's say on the surface it's 25 grand a kid. They don't care if one or two of us pop off about what's going on because their cushy grift ride has no impact to it.
What about holding these people accountable for child abuse? I mean, legally, it's 100% provable with the right doctors, with the right experts, that this is nothing but child abuse. Child abuse equals jail time. Why aren't
Well,
avenues
I can
being
tell you, I can speak for
pursued?
Maine. Like in Maine, we don't have, in Florida has America's governor, Ron DeSantis, right? And
Hmm.
Ron has been killing it on this stuff. He has been putting in bills one after another, knocking the stuff out of the schools.
Hmm.
And so in Maine, we have a Democrat governor, super leftist progressive in Janet Mills. The
Hmm.
House and the Senate are all leftist progressive Democrat run. And our
Hmm.
district attorney, who is basically, chosen by the leftist governor, won't prosecute anybody. Even in my local town here, there was an ordinance that said you couldn't provide, I forget what it was, improper. It wasn't pornography, but it was labeled something like you can't give pornography to kids. Okay.
Yeah.
But even in the local ordinance, it said that libraries and schools were excluded from this law. So, you start to go back in history. I think that thing was from like 1998 or something.
Hmm.
And you just see that there is no way to prosecute these people because, again, as you mentioned, the judiciary, in some cases, the police force, although I'm a big supporter of the police,
Hmm.
but they're put in a lot of different bad positions between rocks and hard places because the law is not clear, although it should be, that a Maine teacher of the year, Kelsey Stoyanova, should not be hypersexualizing 11-year-olds with pornography. It's just a basic construct to humanity, but yet some parents will say, well, I think we're trying to save transgender youth and we're trying to create safe spaces and we want diversity.
Hmm.
Okay, then you do that on your own time as a parent because, again, these schools, they can't
Hmm.
teach the even very basics of education.
Like, okay, let me ask you this, right? Because you were saying that the state is filled with Democrats and all that stuff. But what happens? Well, there's a few things. One is via grand jury, so you don't have to deal with any of the politics. Yeah, it just
Yep.
you could get a grand jury started without having to deal with politicians, and the attorney general has to accept it if you get a certain number of signatures. So that's one avenue.
Yep.
The second avenue is going through the local courts because eventually you're going to get into federal. Fine, they're going to, a bunch of woke judges are going to toss it out. Eventually, you're going to get to federal. Within federal, this is child abuse. It's just child abuse. I don't see, like, if this goes up to the Supreme Court, I don't see the Supreme Court basically going against.
What we need really is we need a set of, well, so here's the catch 22, right?
Mhm.
You need a set of parents who are asleep at the wheel, whose kid was sexually impacted, molested,
Mhm.
whatever happened to this child, from, let's say, a teacher potentially. You
Mhm.
need somebody to then be willing to bring that to a federal grand jury and go through the entire process of having to relive the sexual abuse in weeks, if not months, if not years, in this jury process, right?
Yeah.
And so it is very difficult for parents to bring somebody forward like that. There are other people in other states trying it. It's extremely difficult from what I hear. I have some federal lawsuit wins here on the Freedom of Access Act point. And in my case, a Obama-appointed judge had to basically say in a 28-page ruling, we don't necessarily like what Mr. McBreairty says at the microphone, but he can say whatever the hell he wants, and you can't stop him. And we won a $40,000 legal ruling basically on that. And then the same school district here in Hamden last month kicked me out of the school board meeting when I mentioned a teacher with police, kicked me out with police.
Blatantly disregarded the court order.
What's that?
Blatantly disregarded the court order?
Yes, like it didn't even exist, like they never read it. And I actually had it in my hand, and I said to the Heath Miller, the chair, did you not read this thing? Like, do you not understand?
Shouldn't that judge be literally now warrants arrest, contempt of court?
Yeah, it's like, well, in all of these folks, they have an oath of office, right? An oath of office under God that they sign. They pledge their allegiance to protecting the Constitution of the United States. And it's like these guys have no idea what they're pledging their allegiance to. I've told him many times, he's invalidated that under God. Now, I kind of want to say out of one side of my mouth, I hope he burns in hell. And the other side wants to say, man, maybe he just, again, he doesn't understand. He is a useful idiot. He's a pawn in the teachers' union eyes, in the legal arm of the school board's eyes, in the Maine Department of Education, the Maine School Management Association. All these guys are basically levering somebody like Heath Miller, a useful idiot from Newburgh, Maine, on the school board here. I don't think he really knows what is going on, but at some point somebody has to kind of go, well, wait, time out. Didn't you guys just lose a case that had to do with free speech? Wow, crazy.
Now, in terms of lawsuits that you're telling me, not only have you filed lawsuits that you've won, but you've also been getting sued and bullied by the school board. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Herman, which is the next town over from where I live in Hamden, so it gets a little confusing when I start talking about two cases. Herman is the next town over. They are suing me, trying to take away my First Amendment rights because I called a teacher a sexual predator and a groomer on one of my podcasts. Now, I believe I can put my hand on a Bible in front of a judge and back all of that up, because what I found was not only was this teacher an anti-Trumper who did a pro-Bernie Sanders video from the classroom in the high school, first off, she was also the taxpayer-paid faculty advisor to a gay sexuality alliance that is sponsored by GLSEN, GLSEN, in 4,000 schools across America. This is a big blood money scenario where basically this transgender movement is coming from. Chris Rufo broke this wide open last summer. But the other thing was she created a 40-book transgender library display showing 63 different genders to high schoolers as young as 13. And that was their big deal. And basically I exposed all that, and they're trying to sue me to shut me up. And we're going to win that. We have a hearing coming up in April. And then I fired back just 2 weeks ago a Freedom of Access Act Superior Court case that also involves First Amendment violations and color of law violations, because that same superintendent in Herman, Micah Grant, who is suing me, called 911 on me because I took a selfie of him and I as I was looking over documents in his office. I shit you not.
Wow. Then there was you did a Freedom of Information Act that they said pulling a Freedom of Information release is racist?
Well, yeah, what she said. So this is Vicki Wallach, who's the director of communications from the Maine School Management Association, a woke organization. We pay almost $700,000 to a year. And the connection was we had FOA requested my name in another school district, and we got a connection between Superintendent Perry in Gorham, Maine, near Portland, and this Vicki Wallach, who's the director of communications.
So one sec. Yeah. You're doing an investigation on this person. You find out that she has a connection, which is you're right, and she is literally telling you things that are essentially censoring your investigation because you are investigating her, and she's making that call.
So what happens is they can't defend their position, right? That's one of the things I've learned over these 3 years. When they start to go to name calling, you've won instantaneously. You've won. Put your hand up. This is it. And
white
so what
supremacist.
What she said was that my FOA request was hate speech because I'm somehow targeting LGBTQ youth. First off, I've never targeted a LGBTQ student. I never will. Like I said, I believe that not LGBTQ. I believe the trans part is a cult. And so lesbian, gay, bi, those kind of things, no problem at all. I believe that trans is a cult. I believe, again, there's two sexes. Genders doesn't exist. But anyway, long story short, when I started getting, what I say is, pretend you're in a B-52 bomber and you're dropping truth bombs, right? So I've got my podcast, Main Source of Truth. We've got a Facebook page with all kinds of information for parents. When I'm dropping those truth bombs and I'm right over the target, the flack is always heaviest. And you know, when somebody like Vicky Wallach's head pops off and she says, well, what you're asking for, Shawn, is hate speech. No, I asked you three things, Vicky. How much do you get paid? And it's $128,000 a year. How much does Maine School Management get paid by the taxpayers? $700,000. And any written information on my name, Shawn McBreairty. Now, Vicky Wallach herself had 73 pages, which is kind of stalkerish, if you ask me.
Yeah. She sounds.
And Maine School Management Association had 276 pages on my name. They were keeping a file on everything that I did across the state.
I mean, very J. Edgar Hoover, by the way.
Right.
That's so. And J. Edgar Hoover, for anybody that doesn't know, it was a tyrannical scumbag. They're basically trying to do the same thing as J. Edgar Hoover: keep files on you, keep dirt on you. Insane.
Yeah, and so the last piece of that was I still haven't received that information because they wanted me to pay $182.50. Now, if there is a viewer or a watcher out there, I do have a GiveSendGo account. It's givesendgo.com/Shawn McBreairty. If somebody wants to chip in $20 here and $10 there, I'm gonna get those FOA requests. I'm gonna pay for it. I'd love to have some support, but I think it's going to be another gold mine because it's like a spider web, right? You start to understand that this superintendent is woke and they're talking to this superintendent over there and they're having these conversations in meetings and legal. And it is again, it's sort of the blood money aspect of what's happening.
Yeah. Maze of scumbags.
This is really crazy, you know?
What's that?
I said my dog's going crazy upstairs, if you can hear it. But
all good. So, Shawn, this is pretty amazing. Is there anything in closing that you want to mention to the viewer? Is there something that we didn't want to talk about that you'd want to?
I think really, like I said, for parents, it is getting involved in the curriculum and what's happening in school. You cannot keep your head buried in the sand or up your ass, whatever's going on. You have to get involved with your kids' education, like their lives depend on it. Because I tell every parent they do. We're seeing kids, as you mentioned, anxiety, depression, suicide. We're seeing kids ripped away from families, into this trans cult. It is just mayhem that's going on. Yeah. And if you're not going to fight for your kids' education, you need to pull your kids out tomorrow. I've done almost 60 podcast episodes. I do an audio-only podcast, 45 minutes to an hour, with a number of peers across the country in education, all education-based. And that's called Main Source of Truth. You can find it anywhere you listen. There's a Main Source of Truth Facebook page. And then I'm a pretty good follow on Twitter. And I've started to develop these relationships again across the country. And we're trying to pull in that information so that we can really start speaking as one voice. There are many people like me in every state across the country, but we're trying to get them to kind of get a little more coordinated and really start to speak kind of from the same hymn from the same book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, to summarize what you just said, I mean, for fuck's sake, they're trying to destroy the children. Everybody needs to wake the fuck up because they are literally setting up your children for suicide, depression, a lackluster life. They're trying to take away all the sparkles that exist in life to create another brick in the wall, a gray, nice, dull world where these elitists get to basically, oversee the serf. So that's what they want. They want depressed, broken children. We're seeing it happen. This is one of the worst generations in the history of America. There's so many broken children. Suicide rates through the roof, and that's what we are facing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate. I really feel for this generation. I mean, as we get older, this generation that is all screwed up is going to be taking care of us. So if we don't change things pretty quickly, you might as well just find a nice spot out in the woods somewhere to live the rest of your days. Because if you're in an assisted living and they can't figure out how many pills you're supposed to take, well, you're done.
Yeah, I hear the Mayan Riviera in Mexico is quite nice. So hey,
yeah, exactly right. Yeah, find a boat or do something. But no, I appreciate the opportunity to be on. And again, at Shawn McBreairty on Twitter. If anybody wants to follow me, all the social media is out there. And all I'm trying to do is continue to expose for parents. And I think that the tide is turning, or maybe it's paused. I don't know if it's turned yet, but the tide has paused. I think we're starting to make a difference, and we just need more people to expose the nightmare that's going on behind those brick walls that we used to call a public school system.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Shawn, amazing work that you're doing. I know this stuff's tough. We get attacked for doing this stuff, but you know what? This is for the brave, man. And you're one of the brave. You're one of the heroic characters out there really fighting to stop the utter destruction of our children in the country. And it's really, I mean, the sad part of it is that there's so few of us. The great part of it is that people like us connect, and we are willing to, go to the mat for this country. And that's all it is,
Yes, sir. God bless America. And I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. And for the viewers out there, thank you for joining us for this episode of Blood Money. Check out americahappens.com, where every day we have new episodes posted, as well as our Rumble account, where we have shows with Joey Gilbert, Mindy Robinson, Vem Miller, Gianna Michelli, and many others. Join us on americahappens.com, and I will see you on the next episode of Blood Money. Thank you.